So, welcome to not the podcast yet. This is a vlog on barefoot and minimalist shoes. Right, so it was 2012 at the London Safe House for the Olympics for Oakley. And I was treating this very high up, basically my wife's boss's boss, for very severe foot pain, metatarsalgia. And so he developed this foot pain when he was young because he came from a poor family. He used to walk miles to school, and they had hand-me-down clothes, and he wore shoes that were too small for him. So here he is in his 50s, and he's training for a marathon, and he's limping. And my wife said, "Hey, you're limping. You should go see Lawrence." And so I ended up treating this guy, but I treat him on a $10,000 Barcelona couch. Barcelona, okay? And the guy who let me treat in his couch said, "Don't you get any of your wax on my couch." So I'm treating this guy's feet, and we open his feet up, and we get movement and life back into his feet. And this is a very formal, serious experience. And he starts jumping up and down on the couch like a trampoline, saying, my feet, how can I feel my feet?" Okay. And this, for me, kind of captures the essence of the whole barefoot experience. Rather like the level up experience. Yeah, you get it. So basically, a lot of the times we have so many nerve endings in our feet, actually more nerve endings in our feet than our hands. And it's so vital for our sense of righting reflex, for our hip strength, for our hip control, for our balance. And also it's a sense of delight or sensory sort of proprioception back that we kind of been robbed of. So I think a lot of people are going through life a little dull, a little less animated than they could be. A lot of people ended up wearing shoes before they were even out of the crib. And often walking barefoot or feeling the grass in your feet or feeling the sand in your feet, or my favorite personal experience, running barefoot on the beach, can just be a delight to your senses. The texture of the sand, the cold water, the tingling between your toes. And it takes us back to a time when we were carefree and young and felt better. And so a lot of people have a very, very strong emotional attachment to barefoot running and barefoot movement. And good for you. You should feel more, and you should enjoy the feeling. Okay. But this talk is about how to basically safely navigate barefoot and minimal shoes. And also a juxtaposition, because I did a chat on super shoes and how super shoes can really improve your running form. So again, like most things in human world, there seems to be two sides to every story, and people tend to think in pretty polarized ways or binary ways, like good, bad, right, wrong, my team, your team. And it kind of gets with heel striking and forefoot striking, which is kind of at the core and the essence of minimal barefoot running. So let's just try and disregard all of those things and then approach this with the subject with a sense of curiosity. Okay. The one other pretty cool story about this is there's a lovely video, and I will post the link in the description below if you like, follow, and subscribe. No, you don't have to like, follow, or subscribe. You can unsubscribe if you like. David Attenenborough put there's a lovely YouTube video on persistence hunting with the sand people in Kalahari in Southern Africa. There's two really important things that I think we need to take away from this persistence hunting story. One is how softly, gently, and cautiously they ease into the hunt. They first find the rhythm of the animal. It's very slow. It's very casual. It's very, very measured. Okay, and they go softly into the hunt. And two is they're wearing shoes. Okay. So shoes are a tool, okay, rather like axes and fire and lasers and computers and cameras and your smartphone. Okay, and so we need to use tools as tools and not let tools use us. Okay, who's the master and who's the servant? Sorry, I'm just going to clear my throat quickly. For those of you who don't know, there's a couple of rules associated with this chat, and one is no edits. Okay, and two is the leopard is supple. Right. So carrying on, I'm going to have a little sip of water. So here we are. Now, minimal shoes, barefoot shoes, what do you need to know? First of all, I don't like calling them barefoot shoes because barefoot is barefoot. And in my mind, again, this binary brain that we have, there's barefoot, and then there is shod. If you take a piece of paper, I have some notes, but I won't look at them, I promise. If you have a piece of paper and you put it between your foot and the ground, they estimate that you lose 50% of your proprioceptive skill or ability. So your feedback from the ground is reduced by 50%. You'll see this in dogs. If you put snowshoes on a dog, they'll get drunk, they'll gamble around the room and fall over and like pick their foot up and have no sense of where the ground is. We would be the same too if we were permanently barefoot, and then the first time we put shoes on, it was in our 20s. But we're so habituated to shoes that we've created many sort of bypassing of your shoes. Another incredible story is friends of mine had this kid who was very delayed in walking, and they lived in hardwood floors. And I said, take the kid outside. Didn't really have a great place for outside, so they took him down to the beach. The second the sand got up into his arch, the kid could stand up and run around on the sand. As soon as he got home, couldn't walk. So we need that feedback in our arch and that sort of the sensation in our nerves to strengthen our hips. We function vastly on neural reflexes and feedback loops in our nervous system, and barefoot is really good for our hip strength, our back mobility, our back strength, our balance, our agility, our skills. Okay, so there's barefoot. Now we have shod. In shod, we have more minimalist and more, let's say, super shoe, maximalist kind of shoes. It's just a range. So don't, we've said, I don't know, I have friends that call super shoes cheetah shoes. Well, I'm really happy if someone puts cheetah shoes on, cheats the pain in their knee, and gets out and runs again because they couldn't run before. Okay. Having said that, you've got to understand there are some serious downsides to cheetah shoes, and one is they will weaken your feet, weaken your balance. You can seriously sprain your ankle in them. And so therefore we need to strengthen our feet and improve our balance. And that's why we're having this conversation, right? So let's try and think clearly about things. Okay, so let's just go into the big topic, I think, on everyone's lips, on everyone's minds, on everyone's thoughts, is forefoot versus heel striking, okay? Because that comes up a lot. And Dr. Dan Lieberman himself tends to go with we need to forefoot run in terms of it changes how impact goes through your body, and it reduces peak impact if you run more on a forefoot. I would encourage you to sort of not think forefoot heel strike, okay? Your foot really needs to land as close to underneath your body and center of mass as possible. In people that are relaxed and trust the ground and competent in the space, they tend to heel toe. So their heel often will hit the ground before their forefoot does. And I think that's safe. My wife ran at an international level until she was 23. She only started wearing spikes when she wanted to go to the Olympics. She used to heel toe. Zola Budd, famous barefoot runner, heel toe. There's many examples of running really fast and they heel toe. There's a lovely, I need to find it and try and post a link, but I can't guarantee that, of Maria Tahumara from Tahumara, I think I'm spelling it. That's what happens when you read a lot and don't say things out loud. Okay. Anyway, and they've got this glorious sort of romantic video of her running, and interestingly enough, she's got her Huarache sandals on and she's heel striking. And she's also they've stuck a little bit of a heel onto her sandals. So let's not get too caught up into how your foot hits the ground. I think it's more important what your posture looks like and how well your hip function, because how your hips put your foot in the ground probably matters more than what part of your foot hits the ground. If your foot hits the ground in front of you, that's called an excessive heel strike, let's say, or excessive. Your ankle should never really get in front of your knee. But it doesn't matter if your ankle's in front of your knee, if you land on your forefoot or your heel, both are kind of incorrect, right? So let's not think about forefoot and rear foot. And some people say, oh, well, I'm a midfoot striker. Well, I've never seen someone's midfoot hit the ground before their forefoot or the heel, okay? Maybe the side of your foot can, but the middle of your foot's usually, there's a big arch and that can't contact the ground, okay? But anyway, I don't want to be antagonistic and upset people. Let's just think about solutions. So the big deal is when you run with minimal shoes or barefoot shoes, I prefer to call them minimal shoes because, again, you're not barefoot. you need to really, really take it easy. And I am talking, I think it's safer to run barefoot than it is to run in minimal shoes. And I personally don't run in minimal shoes anymore. I live constantly in minimal shoes. Okay, so I only basically own minimal shoes in terms of casual shoes and walking around shoes and hiking shoes. But I don't run in minimal shoes anymore. I run in cushion shoes or barefoot. Okay, because I live in an environment where the ground's hard, or I run in tar, or I run in concrete. And I think if you take away proprioception, so your body's ability to feel the ground directly, you're taking away a massive neural money in the bank or positivity. And what are you returning in return for what? Okay, no cushioning on unnaturally hard surfaces that are also uniform. So for me personally, I run in cushion shoes or I run barefoot. I don't run in minimal shoes, yet I walk because I want to strengthen my feet. I'm always barefoot. I've actually got socks on rather embarrassingly now, but I don't have shoes on. So basically I walk around the house. I'm barefoot as much as possible. I walk barefoot outside, even in the snow a little bit, and I wear minimal shoes like these. These are my ninja slippers for treating in. Minimal shoes typically are really minimal, okay? It's just enough rubber to not get your foot cut. And they have space for your big toe to be straight and then a very wide toe box, okay, for your forefoot display. But I think people are figuring this out, and you'll find that many of the new modern shoes are much broader in the forefoot and have a straight big toe. So curiously enough, I was kind of involved in Nike having more room for the big toe. I have a gentle role to play in that. But, modern shoe companies are kind of smart, and the modern shoes, the cheetah shoes, as my friend calls them, but modern running shoes are starting to realize we need not to squish the toes, and they're opening up the forebox and the forefoot toe box. And also there's space for the big toe to go straight. Whereas in the past, basically, we were taught that your second metatarsal, your second toe or third toe was the point of the shoe, and your racing slippers would squish your foot, and basically the point would be at the midfoot of your foot. And now Nike kind of disguises it so they don't look like, as my friend calls them, clown shoes. But if you have a look at a pair of Nike super shoes, there's space for the big toe and for the big toe to go straight. And there's the differences are, there's probably more commonality between shoes than there are differences. And it's a choice, and you get to choose. And you get to choose what works for you, because I'm telling you that some people just can't really run barefoot, and it's going to be really, really challenging. And some people, it's so natural and easy, they wonder what all the fuss is about. And somewhere you're on that spectrum. There's a Gaussian curve, right? So you need to think clearly about how it is that I get to access my shoes. Yeah, so I will do a video on how to strengthen your feet and how to get good alignment of your feet and how to basically prep your feet for proper gait and walking. I don't know if I can link that in this video, because that might be a bridge too far for my technological skills, but we'll try, or maybe I'm sure I can, okay, once it's made. Okay, so that we can sort out the mechanics. But one of the things I really encourage you to do is walk backwards, preferably barefoot. And that is really, really good prep for walking forwards barefoot, because it bends your toe, softens up your toes, makes them more flexible, because that's one of the key areas where people that transition to minimal shoes or barefoot shoes, or certainly barefoot running, is the forefoot tends to load more, and also you need a lot of range of motion in the toes, which you might not have. So, a modern structured shoe has a forefoot meta rocker, which is the front of the shoe shapes away, and you don't have to bend your toes. You wear a pair of really minimal shoes or barefoot shoes, and you are going to bend your toes. So the best way to soften up your toes, or not the best way, one of the ways that I really recommend, is to walk backwards with socks on, or no shoes, or minimal shoes, and you will end up bending your toes, putting your heel down. And as you come across, as your foot comes underneath your hip, you'll learn to trust your heel. Now, getting back to the forefoot, rear foot debate, me personally, you can let your feet hit the ground however you want. What I think is important is that you learn to trust your whole body weight through the center or midfoot, mid-ankle, and also the heel. So at some point in your gait, you want your heel to be in contact with the ground and to try and stack the bones from your hips through your femur, through your tibia, through your ankle. And you can experience that walking backwards. As you walk backwards, you realize like, oh, I almost let go all my muscles and I'm stacking my joints and bones. And you need to find that in your running. Because what happens is if you keep, let's say you a 4-foot runner and you run on your 4-foot and you try not to let your heel hit the ground and you're running in minimal shoes and that decreases ground contact times and you have strong opinions, what will happen is your foot will tighten and tighten. And what happens, it tends to lock. Your first met tends to drift away from the ground and you'll lock your midfoot and you're going to become predisposed to injuries. And it can take years to unlock tight feet. But what will happen is typically your first met head, the big joint at the base of your big toe starts drifting away from the ground and you'll start pronating or internally rotating your ankle, excessively pronating, or you won't be able to control the tracking of your knee and you start getting yourself into trouble. Also, the tension in your foot that you start to build up doesn't just end at your foot. Your plantar fascia is continuous around the heel bone into your Achilles tendon. So that's the big tendon at the base of your ankle. So the bottom of your foot and the back of your foot, of your heel, are kind of continuous. And what happens is as your plantar fascia and your foot starts to tighten and shorten, so will your Achilles. And you can massively predispose yourself to Achilles injuries later on. So what happens for a lot of people is you'll run in minimal shoes. It tends to load your knee a little bit less. Maybe your peak impact forces decrease, and it's a change. And you can stress your body in a different way and get a very appropriate response in terms of maybe your old injuries go away, but you're changing that stress from where you're injured to a new place. And there's many people that have run barefoot. I ran in minimal shoes for 2 years, and eventually it was just too stressful. I always had to think, concentrate, couldn't feel the ground. I was kind of running more 4-foot, then I was trying to go 4-foot heel, then outside of my foot. Whereas when I run barefoot, I don't have to think. I just put my feet down on them and I have no sensation of impact at my jaw. So if I run on a treadmill or AstroTurf or a really nice golf course that doesn't have pesticides on it, which basically doesn't exist, or on the beach, on the hard sand, I end up with no sensation of impact. It's almost like you're running on a sense of cushion of air, and that's the proprioceptive feedback that you get from your feet when they're working properly. I put minimal shoes on and that's gone. Like there's impact and I can feel it in my body, and my feet don't feel like they're timing the ground perfectly. And it's not to say that I suppose if you ran in minimal shoes and one pair of shoes on a surface and you really got dialed, that couldn't happen, but it's hard for it to happen. Okay, so it's one of the reasons I just run in cushion shoes. I want to run in a pair of shoes that makes the ground seemingly disappear for me. So that's my personal preference. You do you. Okay. Anyway, but to get back to your walking and your running, you want a sense of when you walk that you stack your joints and your feet relax. You remember your feet are kind of like mountain bike tires, okay, or off-road tires. They're soft. They have to adapt. So if you were running around in the Kalahari chasing kudu, and you knew the secret sign for a kudu, okay, you would want your feet to relax and adapt to a rock or pebble or a twig. Okay, so this notion of a hard sort of locked 4-foot and 4-foot striking is not the way to run in barefoot. You have to relax your feet. And if you watch pictures of Gabriel Selassie or my wife or Zola Budd, their feet hit the ground hard and it's kind of relaxed. Okay, it's not as romantic as we think, and there's certainly, you do need to pretense your muscles, but that happens very, very naturally. And especially if you're barefoot, it'll happen naturally. Your feet will pick up the ground, and your sort of body's ability to pretense and protect your foot and have the correct mechanics is infinitely better than, again, if you put a sole between your foot and the ground. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about forces in running and walking. When we run, our ground impact forces are somewhere between, I don't know, the number keeps changing, 2.5 and 3.5 times your body weight. Okay, so just do the math quickly. I'm 80 kilograms times 3 is a lot. Okay, it's 240 kilograms, thereabouts, okay, worth of impact through my foot. Every step, let's say you take 1,000 steps per kilometer, a 10K run, that's 10,000 times 240 kilograms at least. That's an extraordinary amount of impact. When we walk, it's 1.1 times our body weight, maybe 1.2. So it's only 20% extra than just standing there. So that's why it's really, really safe. And I encourage most people, if you want to go on a barefoot or minimalist shoe sort of journey, is to just start by just simply walking in the shoes. Okay, and walking is really, really good. I will do the first proper podcast that I do. These are vlogs on walking and the benefits and joys of walking and how good it is for you, and how not to ruin a good walk. And I was asked today to do a video on how to go for a walk, because one does not simply go for a walk. Okay. And I'll get round to that as I practice my podcasting and my influencing skills here. Okay, so there we go. Walk in minimal shoes. I really, really strongly encourage it. It's a really, really good idea. My favorite minimal shoes are Vivo Barefoot. I've got a few examples here. I've got like a really cool hiking boot. Okay, so hiking boot. And you can see that's not that minimal, and there's nice tread and traction, and then that will protect your feet from stones. So let's just get into injuries a little bit. When you're running barefoot, you've got to be very, very careful. If you're running barefoot itself, you've got to watch out for cutting your foot or landing on a stone. So if you land badly on a stone, you can fracture bones in your feet, or you can do permanent harm, or you can cut your feet. So be very, very careful of the surface that you run on. And it's the same with minimal shoes. Like it's really traumatic for your feet to run on pebbles or a sort of a stick that's on the ground, or a rock that's jutting out of the ground. Okay. So don't do yourself harm. I promise you, it takes. I grew up, I played rugby and athletics and ran until I was, 12 or 13 barefoot. I've spent an extraordinarily large amount of time life-saving, running around the beach barefoot, running on sand, running on the concrete, running on the pier, barefoot. I didn't like shoes when I was growing up, so I ran around the farm often on gravel. Our whole farmyard was like kind of gravel, barefoot. So I habitually tried not to wear shoes growing up. And I can just tell you, like, it takes gobsmacking amounts of decades to get really, really, really strong, tough feet. And, is the juice worth the squeeze? So just be really, really mindful and careful of how long it takes to strengthen your feet up to the point where you can sort of run around like a naturalist with no shoes. And for most of us, like, unfortunately, what we do in our teens and formative years carries on through for the rest of your life. And if you didn't run around barefoot a lot in your teens, it's probably much harder as an adult to run barefoot or minimalist or walk around without shoes. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's a lot harder. Okay. So just be really, really patient and really, really conservative. My personal opinion on let's say elite athletes, and let's say I work a lot with triathletes. Every triathlete should be running 20 minutes at least barefoot, not with barefoot shoes, barefoot at least twice a week. And the reason is because you run through transitions barefoot. Yeah, and transitions are sometimes long. So sometimes you're running like a mile fast, hard in a race, and you've done no barefoot preparation. That's not how it works. Okay? You need to prepare for races, specificity. So it's a really good idea to actually spend a little bit of time. But the time is 20 minutes twice a week, I think, is enough for most people to have a sense of ground articulation. Very quickly, you figure out my mechanics aren't the same. My two ankles aren't different. It opens up doors to feedback. You can go to your physio, your therapist, and say, hey, I want this. I don't like this. My forefoot doesn't touch the ground. This foot feels different from the other. It's just feedback, right? And the safe way to do it is to start with 1 minute twice a week on a treadmill, because that's really safe. You won't cut your feet or slice them or stand on a rock. And you jog slowly, because remember, when you run barefoot, you really bend your toes. So the faster you run, the more you bend your toes, and you're not prepped for that. So like, let's say 1 minute per kilometer, 1 minute per mile, slower than your normal, easy, slow running pace is what you want to run. So if you run around at 8-minute miles or 5 minutes a K, run on the treadmill at 6.5 minutes a K or 9-minute miles, and just jog for 1 minute. And then each week you can add a minute until you get to, in 20 weeks, you'll be at 20 minutes twice a week. And you can, the safest time to do that is cool downs and warm ups for other sessions. Okay. And you'll probably find that you really enjoy taking your shoes and socks off. Okay. Remember, socks are also a barrier between the ground. So take the socks off too. And you'll probably find it's very, very relaxing and opens up your feet. And people often really enjoy cooling down barefoot for 10 or 15 minutes. So there we go. So that's how I would implement barefoot running into my running. Okay. Minimal shoes into your running. You got to be just about as patient and as slow and as cautious and as careful. Wearing barefoot or minimal shoes in terms of casual wear, that's easy. Just wear them quick trips to the grocery store or like short walks, and start with 20-30 minutes and just get used to your feet opening up, and then very quickly, within weeks, you can be wearing them all day long. And most people find so much relief from wearing minimal or barefoot shoes from structured shoes or tight shoes that that transition is very natural and very quick. Depending again on your age and your history. Okay, so some people it takes longer, and like I say, I'll do a video on how to sort of wake your feet up and strengthen them up, and prepare them for, well, doesn't matter what you run in, minimal shoes or maximalist shoes or super shoes. But if you run in super shoes, you have to work on strengthening your feet. So I strongly suggest pairing super shoes with barefoot walking or running and strengthening your feet. Okay. And then just if you've listened this far, congratulations and thank you. You're an endurance athlete. You're a persistent persistence hunter gatherer. Okay. And but I think also what we need to, and this is something I want to discuss and delve into further, is like, I don't think anyone in our space of helping people with run, and physiotherapists and chiropractors and whatever your profession is where you help people run, I don't think any of us should be too pleased with ourselves or have too strong an opinions. Okay, injury rates are absolutely shocking. Somewhere between 30 to 75% of runners get injured every year. Okay, that's just going out and having a run. No one's whacking you. You're not playing contact sports. This is not MMA. Those are higher injury rates than the NFL. Okay, and there's been no real change in injury rates in the last 40 years. So, someone that loves technology and new shoes and gets involved in this and that and the next thing. And in terms of, just think of, I've been practicing on people for close to 30 years. And I can tell you that we've learned a lot in the last 30 years, but we are not really any better at keeping people injury free. Okay. And I think one of the really, really important take homes again is to instead of having this reactionary, my opinion, this is the way, this is what you need to do, I need to do this, okay, really is to take a step back. And Dan Lieberman and Irene Davis, they did a lot of work on the foot, and they basically say it's how you put your foot down matters more than what you put on your feet. And I think all of us need to start realizing we need to hold knowledge lightly in our hand, and we need to be gentle and careful and explore and be curious and seek knowledge and seek understanding of other people. And if you take this sense of curiosity and play and maybe and what if and why and I don't know everything, you might find that you can find the perfect solution for everyone, because there is no one size fits all. And again, as long as we're all moving, the more we move, the better we think, the more we walk and the more creative we are, the better we understand bigger pictures and the better the world's going to be. So let's get out there and be kind and not vilify and hate on and ostracize people basically of the same tribe. Okay, well, we just want our fellow men to get out there and exercise, because everyone can get a weight off their chest, everyone can think clearer, everyone can, walking is therapy, walking is medicine, running is exercise, it's free. Okay, let's just all be kind and gentle to each other and get out there and move and know what one of the reasons I totally changed basically my profession and the way I work is just because I was so frustrated with how poor we are at basically treating people and fixing injuries and keeping people injury free and robust and strong. So let's just all be very kind and gentle with each other, including ourselves. So I love you, you love yourself, and let me know what you want to work on next, and I'll try and shortly get the footwork video out. And thanks for supporting me. I really appreciate it. And I'm so pro. Did you notice? Okay, take care everyone, and that's me over and out.